Hello everyone, I hope you're doing well. We will be covering Module 62 today, the dynamics of intelligence. So don't forget to jot down some notes and send me a picture or an email. All right, so you have figured out by now that you are smarter than some people and not as smart as others. That is true for every person. And so this module starts off by asking the question, is there something in our brain that actually causes that difference? Is it the size of our brain? Is it that we have more brain tissue or more gray matter versus white matter? Could it be that some of us have faster network speeds than others? We don't know that for sure, but these are some of the possibilities. This module focuses more on how stable is intelligence over the lifespan. In other words, do you lose intelligence as you get older, or do you gain intelligence as you get older? And if you are a really smart 4-year-old, will you also be a well-accomplished, really smart 40-year-old? And so this one also looks at the extremes of intelligence, so high intelligence and low intelligence. All right, so cross-sectional studies, this would be like studies where they are measuring like 20-year-olds, 40-year-olds, and 60-year-olds. And so in cross-sectional studies, researchers have found that older adults answer fewer correct questions than young people on intelligence tests. So if you do a cross-sectional study and you just take groups of people, so you've got 20s taking a test, 40s taking it, and 60s taking it, then generally the 60-year-olds will get less answers correct than the 20-year-olds. And so you can kind of see that in the chart at the bottom of the screen. That is the orange line. And so cross-sectional method or cross-sectional studies show that intelligence declines with age, and it starts to decline rapidly after 46. On the other hand, longitudinal evidence has found stability in intelligence. And so a longitudinal study is where you study one person or one group of people throughout their lifespan. And when people have conducted this type of study, they have found, on the other hand, that there is stability in intelligence. And you can see that demonstrated by the green line on the chart at the bottom of the screen. And so in the 20s, there was a group of people, a group of students who were given an intelligence test, and psychologists saw this as an opportunity to study people longitudinally. And so they retested this same group of people, this cohort of people, over a period of years. And what they found was that until late in life, their intelligence remained very stable. In some cases, on some tests, their scores even increased. So partly due to the fact that they were probably used to the test taking, but these two different studies found very different results. And so the module attempts to answer that question by looking at two different types of intelligence. The first type is called crystallized intelligence. And this is basically our accumulated knowledge, our verbal skills, the facts that we accumulate over our lifespan. And so it makes sense that as you learn things, as you go through school, as you read books, this would be a type of intelligence that increases as we get older. On the other hand, there is a second type of intelligence called fluid intelligence. And this is our ability to reason quickly, our ability to reason abstractly, and this one actually decreases as we enter late adulthood. And so our ability to solve logic problems and to problem solve in general begins to decline slowly up to around age 75, and then starts to decline rapidly after that. And you can see that represented here in this chart we have our guy doing the crossword puzzle. But the orange line represents crystallized intelligence. And so this is knowledge of vocabulary, facts, what words mean. And then the other colors represented there, the green and the purple, the blue, and then the other blue, all represent fluid intelligence, and that you can see how those begin to decline and then start to rapidly decline after 70. So researchers have asked the question, how stable are intelligence tests in predicting intelligent test scores throughout life? And what they have found is that around age 4, intelligence tests are really good predictors of later scores. And this consistency gets better over time. By age 11, the stability and the consistency with which children and teenagers and adults score on intelligence tests throughout their lives, they are generally scoring the same after age 11. And so there's been a lot of longitudinal studies on this where people are tested throughout their lifespan, and by age 11, their scores begin to get really consistent. Researchers have also found that generally people who have a higher intelligence also tend to have a longer, healthier lifespan. There's a couple of possibilities, a couple of possible explanations for that. And one of them could just be the simple fact that intelligent people usually have better opportunities regarding education. Once they have a good education, they can get a better job, that creates wealth, and then they can live in a healthier environment. Also, intelligence also encourages healthy living. So typically intelligent people, they smoke less, they eat better, they exercise more. So we don't know exactly why, but there is a tendency for intelligent people to live a healthier, longer life. All right, so looking at the extremes of intelligence, starting with the low extreme. So an intellectual disability is a condition of limited mental ability. There are two ways that they determine whether or not a person is disabled, and one of them is if they have an IQ of less than 70, and the second one is if they have the life skills or enough life skills to allow them to live on their own. And if the answer to both of those questions is no, then they are considered intellectually disabled. Sometimes we know why a person might have an intellectual disability, and sometimes we don't know. One thing that we do know is that if a child is born with an extra copy of the 21st chromosome, then they will have Down syndrome. And with Down syndrome, their abilities vary. And sometimes they can be independent, they can live on their own. And then sometimes they are nonverbal and they can't sit in a school type setting. So just depending on the child, their abilities will vary if they have Down syndrome. On the other extreme, you have people with high intelligence. And one of the most famous studies on this was done in 1921 by Lewis Terman. This was the guy who adapted Binet's test, and now it's the Stanford Binet test, but that's Lewis Terman. He was a Stanford University professor. But he studied over 1,500 California school children with really high IQs. They had IQ scores of over 135, and what he found was that these students were very healthy, they were well adjusted, and they were obviously unusually successful academically. But you think of people who are highly intelligent, and a lot of times there is a stereotype on those people that they are socially awkward or they are incapable of having a healthy social life. And this study and several studies after have shown that that is actually not the case. Many of the people that Terman studied went on to be doctors and lawyers and professors, writers, and scientists. The problem with this, educators especially fear that if you have a school program, like a gifted education program, and you test children and label some of them as gifted and segregate the high-scoring children in special classes and offer them enrichment, it can cause the students who aren't classified as gifted children to feel ungifted. And so the best way to solve this problem is to test children to find out where they are academically and then put them in appropriate classes that will challenge them. So whether or not they are on the lower end of intellectual ability or the higher end of intellectual ability, they will all be challenged. And I forgot to address the self-fulfilling prophecy thing. Self-fulfilling prophecy is where you believe something about yourself, and so you behave in a way that lines up with what you believe about yourself. And so the fear there is if you label some as ungifted, you wouldn't actually do that, but if they feel like they have been labeled as ungifted, and then you deny them enrichment, they might perform poorly because they believe that about themselves. They might be capable of performing at a high level, but if they perceive that their educators think of them as ungifted, then they will perform as ungifted. All right, that's all. I hope you guys have a great day. Don't forget to send me a picture of your notes.